How we doing, everybody? UFC Thoughts here, and today I'm going to be going over my picks and breakdown for every fight on UFC 310, Pantoja vs. Asakura on December 7th, 2024. Timestamps in the comments below. Let's get right into it with the first fight of 14. We start with Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Łukasz Brzeski. At heavyweight, I'm going to go with Kennedy. I like Kennedy at heavyweight. For one, what was the last weight he weighed in? What was his last weight? 236, so he was cutting roughly 31 pounds. 30 at least. I like that. I like that for Kennedy. It looks like he's building into this heavyweight frame. He's built like a fucking heavyweight, for Christ's sake. 6'5". One of the reasons why I'm going to pick Kennedy is one of the advantages Łukasz Brzeski will have against a lot of his opponents is his speed. He's kind of a quicker heavyweight because he is kind of slim. He's got like a little bit of like overhang on his tummy, but he's pretty quick because he's not like fat. Kennedy Nzechukwu is going to be quicker than Łukasz Brzeski. He's also going to have that light heavyweight skill. He's fought a lot of better people than Łukasz Brzeski, and I don't like it when a slow poke like Mick Parkin is able to clobber you and rock you around. But Łukasz Brzeski was hitting Mick Parkin quite a bit on the boxing, on the feet, which is where Mick Parkin is usually at his best. So Łukasz Brzeski can possibly catch Kennedy, because that is one of the biggest faults in Kennedy Nzechukwu's game, is sometimes he's a bit lackluster with his output. But it looked like his output was very good against Chris Barnett, and maybe that is just due to the fact that he is such a smaller opponent, but I think that Kennedy Nzechukwu is going to really come into his own at heavyweight. He's not going to have to cut so much weight. He's not going to have a faulty, dehydrated chin, because that's one of the reasons why he was held back so much at light heavyweight, because he felt like he couldn't take a punch during moments. I mean, Dustin Jacoby would just land one decently, like, not even flush right hand, and Kennedy would go down. Łukasz Brzeski, he's more of a on-the-range kind of guy. He's not even going to be able to use that. He's going to have to get on the inside against Kennedy Nzechukwu. He's not going to be able to fight at range against a guy like Kennedy Nzechukwu, especially heavyweight Kennedy, who isn't so worrisome about his chin. He actually is not dehydrated. He's actually fuller. So I think Kennedy Nzechukwu, I think he's going to TKO Łukasz in the first or second round. Łukasz Brzeski's chin has always been very suspect to me. I think, are all of his losses by KO? I feel like there's a chance that they are. 3 of them are. Kennedy's also been knocked out, 3 times? 2. He's been KO'd 2 times. I just think that Łukasz Brzeski is kind of... he's a little too open on the feet sometimes. When slower people are landing on you, I favor a quicker, more technical kickboxer against you than you yourself. So I'll go Kennedy Nzechukwu, first or second round knockout. Łukasz Brzeski, he's not going to have his biggest advantages in this fight, and he's just going to get knocked out. We move to Guida versus Chase Hooper. The biggest favorite on the card is Chase Hooper. I'm going with Chase Hooper. I do think that Guida is 42. I don't think it. I know it. We all know it. He's an old man, hasn't fought in over a year. Clay, he's a marauder, man. This guy's a marauder. He's going to chase you down. He's going to feint at range. And, he's not going to throw a lot. And he's going to, pull back on a lot of leg kicks. Not really land anything. But he's going to be in your face all night. Chase Hooper, I just think, is going to be better than Guida everywhere. Guida on the feet, very feint heavy. He fights like an old head. He's like, I'm going to throw. I'm going to throw now. No, I'm going to throw now. And then he throws like a 3-punch combination, backs off because he's gassed out. Guida will not even be able to use the most monumental part of his game, which is his wrestling, crazy effective against a guy like Chase Hooper, who's going to have a reach advantage, size advantage, power advantage, grappling advantage, jiu-jitsu advantage. Chase Hooper, if he loses to Guida, I will be severely disappointed. Chase Hooper, he honestly could stay on the feet with Guida and not really be that fearful. I think that Chase Hooper's counter-striking has actually looked pretty improved in that Vyacheslav-Borshchev fight. He has very swift head kicks because he has kind of like he's got good hip flexors on his body. His straight left is pretty dangerous, and Guida shows damage a lot, and this is not a dehydrated, like I said with Kennedy Nzechukwu, this is not a dehydrated chin Chase Hooper down at featherweight where he's cutting a massive amount of weight, getting chinned by every other guy that he fights. Chase Hooper, we've seen him take big punches at lightweight by, Evloev in his last fight. I think that Chase Hooper is going to really come into himself, like my exact point with Kennedy and Nzechukwu. I think he's really going to come into himself at this lightweight weight class. And we've seen that 3 times in a row. Nick Fiore, Jordan Levitt, Vyacheslav Borashev. He's finished 2 of these fights. I mean, submitting Jordan Levitt is pretty crazy. I know Paddy Pimblett did it. Did Paddy have to do it in round 2, though? I think he did, right? He did have to do it in round 2. Chase got him out of there in the first round, right? I think that Chase Hooper just really is showing him into his true skill set. He's improving in the striking. His power looks pretty well at lightweight. He's so flexible on the ground that a guy like Clay Guida, who is kind of shorter and stockier, who has those limbs that he can grab onto and not raise his body. I think Chase Hooper can just scramble really well with Clay Guida, even if he does get takedowns. I'll go Chase Hooper, 2nd round submission. We move to Michael Chiesa versus Max Payne Griffin. I'm going to go with Michael Chiesa. Both are going to be pretty relatively low output in this fight. Max Griffin really doesn't throw a lot, especially as of recent. He used to be a huge pressure guy where he would break you and out-volume you and just do more than you. But as of recent, man, he's been very, hasn't been throwing a lot, hasn't been the most active guy either. Same with Michael Chiesa, of course. I mean, this dude, he's almost a full-time analyst at this point. But he's going to be younger than Max Griffin. Max Griffin's 38. He's never really been the quickest guy on the block. Neither is Michael Chiesa. But Michael Chiesa, I like his strength of schedule more than Max Griffin. I just do. I think that his strength of schedule in his past couple of fights, excluding Tony Ferguson, it's Kevin Holland, Sean Brady, Vicente Luque, Neil Magny, RDA, Diego Sanchez, Carlos Condit. These are 2019, 2018 versions of these guys. Max Griffin beat a 2020 version of Carlos Condit, 2021. Yeah, he lost to Neil Magny. I think that Michael Chiesa is going to be stronger than Max Griffin, and I think Max Griffin really suffers from an ideology that you need to be super technical. He really keeps the guard high, he stomps, tries to, make you bite on his feints when he's not even feinting anything. He's just moving his head. You're not going to get anything out of that dude. I think Michael Chiesa is going to be faster than him. I like Michael Chiesa's straight punches in this fight. Same with Max Griffin. Both are going to have the jab and straight hand punches on deck this entire fight. Both struggle against that pretty heavily, but I like Michael Chiesa. I think his Tony Ferguson performance, he actually looked pretty good. I know it's Tony Ferguson. It's still Tony Ferguson. I think Max Griffin would probably struggle a little bit with Tony Ferguson, if I'm being honest. Michael Chiesa is big for welterweight. He was a big lightweight. He's even big for welterweight. Very strong. When it does get to the ground, he is very potent for submissions, and Max Griffin doesn't have that submission threat at all. I mean, he has 2 wins by submission in his entire fucking career. When was his last time he got a submission? Fucking 2014 against Randall Wallace. Holy shit. I just think that Michael Chiesa is going to be able to control Max Griffin against the cage, probably make it a stinkier, not really great fight. If I'm going to be honest, I do think that this fight will go to decision. I think Michael Chiesa is going to get the nod. I think he does a bit more in the clinch, does a bit more on the feet, lands a bit more, and I think that Max Griffin probably retires after this, I'm going to be honest with you. But I'll go Michael Chiesa, unanimous decision, 30-27, one might give it 29-28. Let's not forget, Michael Chiesa was almost the guy to fraud check Sean Brady. He almost was able to do that against Sean Brady. People forget, man. I'm joking, but yeah, Michael Chiesa. We move to Cody Durden versus Joshua Van. Yeah, this one's kind of tough. This one's a little tricky. I'll go Joshua Van. You know what? I don't even care if I miss on this pick. I fucking love Joshua Van. Cody Durden, very pressure heavy. His striking has looked very improved in his past couple of performances. People forget, man, Bruno Silva. Cody Durden was kind of tuning him up for a lot of that fight. Hurt him at the beginning of round 2. He just kind of got caught really fucking bad. And that's something you'll see that happens to Cody Durden a lot of the times. He doesn't get knocked out a lot. Same with Joshua Van. They both only have 1 KO loss. Is that other loss of Joshua Van? Because it was outside of the UFC. Was that KO or was that it was sub? These guys, they get caught a lot and they get hurt, but they don't get knocked out a lot. They get like wobbled. Like Cody Durden got wobbled by Matt Schnell a couple of times, got dropped by Tagir Ulanbekov. Joshua Van, I think the place that Cody Durden really struggles in, he leaves a lot of openings, both of them kind of do, is in the pocket. That's where Joshua Van is going to have a lot of momentum. He's going to be ripping to the body, hurting Cody Durden to the body, tanking that gas tank that Cody Durden has. And this is not a guy that Cody Durden can just run over in the grappling even. Joshua Van's grappling has been very improved throughout his career. It's one of his underrated aspects of his game is his grappling and his wrestling, defensive and offensive. I think Joshua Van can hurt Cody Durden, and even if Cody Durden does hurt him, he can actually try and initiate a clinch or takedown scenario and possibly get it. Cody Durden, he's looked pretty solid his last couple of performances. I will give him that, but I think that him being as open as he is and willing to exchange in the pocket as he is, I think Joshua Van is going to catch him a multitude of times and possibly finish him in maybe the third or second round. I think that the first round will be very competitive. I think the first round will probably go to Cody Durden because it does take a second for Joshua Van to enter that flow state. It takes usually a round for him to finally gather his bearings. Most of the first round to finally be able to set down and find his range and then find his shots in the pocket. I just don't think Cody Durden has the weapons and tools that Edgar Shirez and Charles Johnson had that were very potent against a guy like Joshua Van, like the low kicks, like the body kicks. I don't think Cody Durden really has those in his arsenal. He's very particular with his boxing, mostly on the feet. He throws a couple head kicks here and there, but Joshua Van, you got to be have a bit more variety in your attack, and I don't think Cody Durden really has that. I'll go Joshua Van late second or early third round TKO. We move to Chris Weidman versus Eryk Anders. I think you all know my pick. I'm going Chris Weidman. This fight was originally scheduled for 309. That was actually in my 309 picks and breakdown video. This fight got canceled on fight day due to Eryk Anders, I think, suffering from food poisoning, was it? I think it was food. I think he had bad, when he was rehydrating, he had bad food. But yeah, I think Chris Weidman, one of the main aspects is that Chris Weidman has just the speed advantage. This is at catch weight. What catch weight? Is this 195? Is that what this is at? It's at catch weight. What's the weight? I'm assuming 195 or something like that. Who gives a shit? Eryk Anders, very slow, easily countered. Eryk Anders, on the come up for a long part of his career. Like I said in my earlier video talking about this fight, he used to have this presence where it's like, oh my God, he's just stalking me. I can't hurt him. People like Jamie Pickett are hurting him bad. Chris Weidman, I thought his performance against Bruno Silva was actually very impressive, considering that Bruno Silva was seen as a guy who would have the very big opportunity on the feet to beat up Chris Weidman, but it was actually Chris Weidman beating up Bruno Silva on the feet and on the ground. I just think Eryk Anders, he is younger than Chris Weidman, but he doesn't look younger, if you know what I mean. In the fight, he looks way older. He's very slow, very to himself, very tight, doesn't throw a lot, very slow. I think that Chris Weidman, honestly, is going to piece apart Eryk Anders. I don't think Eryk Anders' clinch game is going to be evolved enough or, just good enough to, dominate a guy like Chris Weidman. I think Chris Weidman is going to chop down the legs of Eryk Anders, and I think Eryk Anders is going to be slower than last time. He also just suffered from food poisoning, which I imagine fucking sucked, and that wasn't even that long ago. So I think Chris Weidman is going to have the speed advantage, stand-up advantage, and just beat up Eryk Anders. I'll go Chris Weidman, unanimous decision, 29-28. I don't know if I picked him by finish or decision last time, but I think that this fight will go to decision now, just because of another weight cut. We move to Randy Rude Boy Brown versus Bryan the Butcher Battle. This is a great fight. I truly believe that this fight only ends in a masterclass by one of these guys. I think that if Randy Brown wins, it's going to be a masterclass. I think if Bryan Battle wins, it's going to be a masterclass. I think Bryan Battle's going to win. Now, Randy Brown has mastered distance management at welterweight with his long intangibles. He has his long weapons, his very long arms, long legs. teeps to the body, straight shots, has very good variety with his shot selection. He'll throw a flying knee, he'll throw a question mark kick. Randy Brown can get going. I think Bryan Battle's pressure is what's really going to set this fight aside. I think it's really going to play a huge factor on this fight because Randy Brown does slow down at times, especially when the clinch gets involved. Bryan Battle is going to look to clinch Randy Brown at times. He's going to try and wear down on the gas tank that is Randy Brown's rather. And Randy does slow down sometimes. You have to corral a guy like Randy Brown. Now you're going to have to eat a couple shots coming in, and I think Bryan Battle can do that. He has to do it smart, though. He has to make a very smart effort at doing it. He can't just wander in like a hobo and just be like, I'm going to eat all your straight punches. He's got to move his head, which Bryan Battle has struggled with at times. But his defense, his guard is kind of all right. I think Bryan Battle is going to mentally break Randy Brown in this fight. I mean, with Randy, all it really takes is one shot and he's hurt. I know that's how like all of MMA works, but especially for Randy Rude Boy Brown, this dude, all it takes is one flush right hook. And he's going to start, dancing around in the cage, and I think Bryan Battle's going to be able to land those right hooks. I think he's going to be able to land those straight shots. I think he's going to be able to corral Randy Brown against the fence. It is a bigger cage, which does play into the part of Randy Brown. But I think Bryan Battle's performance against Kevin Jessie was very incredible, in my opinion. I think Kevin Jessie was one of the more underrated guys at welterweight, and he kind of stormed through him, right? And that's kind of been the case of Bryan Battle's career up to this point, besides like the Renat Fakhretdinov fight, is that he kind of has to get hit a couple times, and then he just blasts through people. He also has just blasted through people like the Gabe Green fight and then the Soto fight, right? I think that's who he fought in that fight. But yeah, I think that Randy Brown, he's going to get pressured a lot. He's going to get clinched, fucked. He's going to get hit with a bunch of straight shots. He's going to tire out, and Bryan Battle is going to be in front of him, not stopping. And I think that's going to play a huge factor. Randy Brown also doesn't have the grappling essentials to be able to out-grapple Bryan Battle, in my opinion. I think that the Renat Fakhretdinov fight was in the worst performance in Bryan Battle's career. Up to this point, very short notice. I think that Bryan Battle's at his apex right now, entering his prime. Very cool performance last time out. He's not going to be at a heavy reach disadvantage like many people when they fight Randy Brown are. I'll go Bryan Battle. We move to Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling. Oh man, I'm gonna go with Movsar. I want Aljo to win so bad. I want him to win because I think it would be hilarious that Movsar loses to Aljamain Sterling, especially in the build up to this fight. But I think that Movsar Evloev, he's gonna be stronger, in my opinion, than Aljamain Sterling because he is just fucking yoked for featherweight. So is Aljamain, to be fair. Aljo's 35. He's old for featherweight, man. He really is. And on the feet, the only area where Aljamain Sterling really has the advantage on the feet especially is going to be the kicking game. I like Aljo's leg kicks. I think he sets up his kicks decently well. His boxing, man, is just atrocious. It is so, just sloppy boppy boxing, man. Especially at featherweight. In that Calvin Kattar fight, he was just winging overhands. Movsar Evloev, his boxing's actually pretty good. He's actually pretty good. He's more technical than Aljamain by far. And the ground, I don't think Aljamain Sterling is going to, out-muscle Movsar Evloev, in my personal opinion. He can maybe in the first round, but Aljamain Sterling's cardio has always been kind of the weakest part of his game. Besides his boxing, his cardio has always kind of plagued him, especially in those title fights where, he really relies on winning those first couple rounds because he slows down. In that Henry Cejudo fight, he really got a second wind. In those Piotr Jan fights, he started to slow down and he couldn't really do much. This is a 3-round fight, so that really benefits him because he can kind of go hard for 3 rounds. But Movsar Evloev, his cardio is genuinely very impressive for featherweight, for how built he is and the style of fight he poses. His strength, his boxing, his cardio are going to be really big factors. Aljamain Sterling leaves a lot of openings on the feet that can be taken advantage of by people with higher caliber boxing sets. especially by somebody who isn't afraid of the takedown. That's what I'm trying to get at. Movsar Evloev's not going to be afraid of the takedown like Calvin Kattar. If Calvin Kattar had better takedown defense, which I thought going to that fight was like, he's got brick wall takedown defense. But I know Movsar Evloev has brick wall takedown defense. I just know he does. His name ends in EV. All right, it's kind of a package deal. Aljamain Sterling, he's going to be a bit like wider than Movsar Evloev. I think he's a bit more like bulky. But I think that Movsar Evloev's boxing is very slick. For a primary wrestler, in fact. I think that if Aljamain Sterling fought Arnold Allen, I think he would struggle way more than Movsar. And I know I'm one of those guys that thinks that Arnold Allen really has a big case of winning that fight. I think that Movsar Evloev did show a lot of good things in that fight, though, if I'm being totally honest. I don't totally hate Movsar Evloev. I think that people discredit him a lot more than they should. So I think Movsar Evloev, I think he's going to... he could finish Aljo. He could TKO him. I'll go Movsar Evloev TKO third round. Up to that point, though, I imagine this fight's going to be primarily not the greatest, if I'm being honest. I think that if it will be entertaining, it's going to be Aljo getting caught early by the boxing to Movsar, but I think Aljo's going to really resort to takedowns in this fight because I think he's going to be getting hurt on the feet a lot. So I'll go Movsar Evloev, either unanimous decision or third round TKO. We move to Vicente Luque versus Themba Gorimbo. I'm going Vicente Luque. I'm kind of disgusted at these odds that I'm seeing right now, plus 136, minus 162. Maybe I'm just behind on Themba Gorimbo. Maybe I'm not seeing what others are seeing. He's sloppy as fuck on the feet. He's taking this pretty crazy short notice, if I'm being honest. Same with like other fighters on this card, like the Cody Durden Joshua Van fight. Those two are pretty short notice. He took this fight he fought October 12th against Nico Price. Couldn't finish Nico Price. Now, granted, he did grapple the shit out of both Nico and Ramiz Brahimaj. I don't think they are as good as Vicente Luque. Is that crazy for me to say that? On the feet especially, those guys. Like, Nico Price was landing some decent shots on the feet against Themba Gorimbo, and he was getting hurt a little bit by Themba. I don't think Vicente Luque gets hurt by Themba Gorimbo. He's so wingy with his shots. I think this fight's going to look a lot like a young Jalen Turner versus Vicente Luque. I think he's going to get really wild in the pocket with him. And I think that Vicente Luque is just going to lay a hammer on Themba Gorimbo in these weird clinch scenarios or pocket exchanges where Themba Gorimbo's arms are all the way out here and he gets fucking clobbered with a right hand. I think Themba Gorimbo, I don't see it. I'm sorry. I think Vicente Luque's leg kicks are going to play a huge factor in this fight. Themba Gorimbo heavily relies on his wrestling at the moment. Which you need your legs to power through those takedowns. Themba isn't as explosive as like Joaquin Buckley. He isn't like explosive like that. He's pretty like methodical and technical with the way he enters those takedown exchanges. I don't get it. I don't get these odds. I'm sorry. Like, I think that fight, I know RDA is pretty poop. Like at welterweight especially, but he went like 2-7, man. Vicente out-grappled RDA. Now, Themba would probably do that too, to be fair. But I think Vicente Luque, I think he's going to catch Themba Gorimbo in one of these awkward, like I said, pocket exchanges where Themba Gorimbo, maybe he hits Vicente Luque with a straight right hand. He thinks he has him hurt, and he just starts going supersonic. And then Vicente Luque lays a right hook or left hook and drops Themba Gorimbo bad and knocks him out. I don't really get these odds. Themba Gorimbo doesn't have the style that can overwhelm Vicente Luque like a Joaquin Buckley or like a Jeff Neal, where you're throwing so much out there. Or like Wonder Boy, for example, where you have so much variety with your output that he kind of freezes on the feet, doesn't know what's going on, and then that opens up the takedowns, like Bilal Muhammad, for example. Themba Gorimbo doesn't offer that, in my personal opinion. I'm going Vicente Luque first round TKO. We move to the featured prelim. Dominick Reyes versus Anthony Lionheart Smith. I'm going Dominick Reyes. Now, oh man, if Dominick Reyes loses to Anthony Smith, oh my god. Don't you fucking dare, MMA gods. I think Dominick Reyes, his southpaw side body kick is going to work very well against Anthony Smith. Just his southpaw side kick in general is going to work because that's one of the best weapons of Dominick Reyes in his entire career, his straight left hand as well. You know, a guy that as slow as Roman Dolidze is able to catch Anthony Smith. I think that a guy who's quicker, a bit more athletic, is going to be able to do so as well. I like Dominick Reyes in this fight. It's 3 rounds, so it's not going to overexert him. Anthony Smith was the last guy he knocked out was Ryan Spann, right? In that fight, and Ryan Spann's chin's kind of iffy, but so is Dominick. Anthony Smith hasn't been KO'd like a crazy amount, has he? He's been TKO'd 10 times. I take it back. Come on, Dom. Dominick, knock his ass out, Dominick. Come on, Dom. Come on, buddy. I think that the straight left hand is going to be potent for Dominick Reyes. I think if he even just sees tape, he'll see that Anthony Smith just doesn't understand leg kick defense. And I think that could be a really big weapon for him as well because Anthony Smith it's going to be an open stance fight. So both of their rear side kicks are going to be very available to them. So I think that Anthony Smith, he's going to do the traditional game that he does, try and open up with some low kicks. He'd be like, I'm super technical. On paper, I beat John Jones. On paper, I'm better than John Jones. On paper, if you really look at it, if you take my individual skill sets and put it against his individual skill sets, I'm just a better fighter. He just mixes it better because it's mixed martial arts. I think Anthony Smith's going to look slow in this fight again because he does always. He's taken so much damage throughout his career. So is Dominick Reyes, to be fair. But I think Dominick Reyes, I think he has another one left in him in this year. 2-0 on the year for Dominick. Come on, guys. Let's get in a prayer circle. Petr Yan 2-0 in the year. Dominick Reyes 2-0 in the year. Alex Pereira 3-0 on the year. Come on, guys. We can get a prayer circle. Fucking come in. I think Dominick Reyes should knock out Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith is pretty poop. If he knocks out Dominick Reyes, I will cry. So, Dominick Reyes, please win. I think the straight left, the southpaw side kick is going to work. I think Anthony Smith's offense is very rudimentary as of now. I don't think the wrestling is going to work for him either. So, Dominick Reyes. We move to the start of the main card. Nate Landwehr versus DooHo Choi. I'm going to go with Nate the Train in the UFC, baby! Woo! Now, DooHo Choi can knock him out. Yeah, sorry to get it so hyped on you. DooHo Choi can knock out Nate Landwehr. We've seen, especially as of recent, Nate Landwehr have troubles with taking shots early on, especially against David Onama, Jamal Emmers. I still can't believe that this dude lost to Herbert Burns. It pisses me off so much. DooHo Choi, on the other hand, crazy and active, and similar chin issues. I mean, Bill Algeo was touching him up a little bit, hurt him with a spinning elbow in that first round, was touching him up with the straight shots. Nate Landwehr's going to be a bit more conventional than DooHo Choi. DooHo Choi is also they're both pretty technical. DooHo Choi early on does get a little squirrely with his overhand rights. He kind of wings them a little bit. I think Nate Landwehr can honestly grapple a little bit against DooHo Choi, if I'm being totally honest with you. Nate Landwehr, his wrestling is somewhat underrated in my personal opinion, and DooHo Choi, doesn't have the greatest takedown defense, if I'm being honest. He has good get-ups, great get-ups, in fact. He does have, he shoots a lot of submissions, but he doesn't get any. He has, one submission win in his entire fucking career. Nate Landwehr, I think his pressure is going to really play on DooHo Choi. I think he's going to be able to catch DooHo Choi. I think this fight's going to look a lot like the Jamal Emmers one. DooHo Choi possibly catching Nate Landwehr early. Nate Landwehr pressing on. DooHo Choi still kind of catching him. Going into the late first round, possibly into the second, Nate Landwehr starts catching DooHo Choi. From then on, Nate Landwehr, the momentum, the tides start to shift drastically, and Nate Landwehr starts to just beat on DooHo Choi, possibly finishing him midway through the second or third round. So I'll go Nate Landwehr. TKO, I think the pressure from Nate Landwehr it's so hard to finish him. You can hurt him. You can definitely hurt him. It's hard to get the finish, though. That's what we've noticed about Nate Landwehr. So, Nate Landwehr over DooHo Choi. Lock it in. We move to Bryce Mitchell versus Kron Gracie. I, like many others, am going to pick Bryce Mitchell because he's the correct pick. If you somehow pick Kron Gracie and are right, you didn't pick him because you thought he was going to win. You picked him because he's a huge underdog. Okay? I'm not going to take anything from you guys. Kron Gracie, his striking is just very minuscule and minute. I know there were some times in that Cub Swanson fight where he was mounting some decent offense against Cub, but against Charles Jourdain, he definitely just forgot how to punch. His striking looked very shit in that fight. So Kron Gracie, he's just not great at fighting mixed martial arts. That's like all it is. He's older. He's 36 years old. Has the activity of Chuck Liddell, like when he's older. You know what I mean? So like he fights like once every 5 years. Dude, 2019 was the last time this guy won a fight, and it was in February. My brother. How did he beat Alex Caceres? I'm pissing myself off looking at his transcript. Kron Gracie, he's going to try and get this fight to the ground. If Bryce Mitchell just goes in there with the same game plan as Charles Jourdain, you know what I mean? Goes in there, not trying to do any cutesy shit, just doing the fundamentals. Use your all-right boxing. I mean, you did knock down Edson Barboza at one time. You were able to evade the shots of Ilia Topuria at some times. You were able to land on Ilia Topuria during some points in that fight. You should be able to beat Kron Gracie pretty fucking easily, Bryce. Come on. He isn't a heavy power puncher. Okay? Kron Gracie has exactly no KO wins. He has 5 submission wins. Just don't go to the ground with him. Just don't grapple. You can beat him fairly easily. Simple as. We move to Ciryl Gane versus Alexander Volkov 2. I'm going to go with Ciryl Gane. I want to pick Volkov so bad. I want to see Volkov win. He's my favorite heavyweight on the roster, as some of you may know. I think that Ciryl Gane, his shot selection and speed are just still better than Volkov from their first fight. I think that Ciryl Gane... Volkov's improved since their first fight heavily, may I say. His speed is way better from their first fight, especially with like his low kicks. His shot selection's also pretty solid. He doesn't overexert himself. He places his shots very well. I just think that Ciryl Gane does both of those things a little better. And I think Ciryl Gane's improved probably the weakest part of his game, which was his grappling. And I think Ciryl Gane, he's quicker. He probably hits harder than Volkov. And I think Volkov just doesn't do enough damage. You know what I mean? And this is not a Sergey Pavlovich where Pavlovich, it says that he has an 84-inch reach. We all know that's bullshit, right? We all know that he doesn't have... Like, that's because he's so wide. Ciryl Gane has long arms. All right, he does have long arms. Volkov's not going to be able to but use his range and that long jab, those long utensils, those teeps to the body. Those are things that Ciryl Gane's going to be able to use as well. So, I think that, Ciryl Gane, he's going to be a bit smaller than Volkov. Of course, Volkov is one of the biggest heavyweights on the roster. But I think that Ciryl Gane, he is the biggest heavyweight on the roster. What the fuck am I talking about? But I think Ciryl Gane, I think the low kicks are going to work well for both. I think Ciryl Gane's are going to be a little bit more potent. I think the body shots of Ciryl Gane are going to work very well. I like the body attack from Ciryl Gane. The kicks to the body, the knees to the body when he's entering in, just the shot selection that he has. And when he starts to break you down low, Volkov can't break you down low. He struggles heavily doing that. I mean, he couldn't do that to Gane in the first fight. He was struggling with the low kicks to land them, at least. Volkov, he has increased his speed, but I think Ciryl Gane is still the second quickest heavyweight on the roster behind Tom Aspinall, of course. But that's still a huge gap between him and Volkov, I believe. I think the gap between him and Volkov is pretty great in, like, footwork speed, at least. So Volkov has improved. If he wins this, I would be so fucking happy. I want him to win. I think he can win. But I think Ciryl Gane is just a little bit better to the day on the things that Volkov does well, which is the kickboxing, the kind of point style kickboxing that Alexander Volkov has, especially as of recent, where he places his shots better. He doesn't throw as much. But I think Ciryl Gane just does that a little better and has more pop in his punches, and I think he can do more damage than Volkov. I think that's really what it's going to come down to. I don't think either of these guys finish each other. I think it's going to go to a close decision. I think Ciryl Gane's going to outpoint him in a competitive 30-27. And what I mean by that is I think the rounds are going to be close, but I think it's going to be definitively Ciryl Gane winning them with like a huge moment or something along those lines. Maybe he hurts him to the body with a body kick. Maybe he maybe he drops Volkov once or twice. I think Gane is just going to be a bit better in those moments and win those rounds more definitively. We move to the co-main event. 5 rounds. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Gary. Wow, what a fight this is going to be. I'm going to pick Shavkat. Now, Ian Gary can somehow win. He can. He has to finish Shavkat. He cannot go to a decision. I'm going to tell you why. I think Shavkat, he's going to pressure Ian Gary hard as fuck in this fight. He's going to try and walk him down. Ian Gary does very well at distance. When you try and corral him, when you get in those pocket exchanges with him, when you don't give him space, when you don't allow him to find his range, find his shots, give him his timing, that's when he really struggles. Ian Gary has weapons that can work very well against Shavkat. We've seen them work before, which is his straight punches, those knee stomps that he has, those teeps to the body that he loves to use. Ian Gary has very long legs for this division. Another thing that he likes to do is he likes to set up those head kicks. He likes to go low, set up high. That's one of the key things of Ian Gary's career is his low kicks leading into head kicks, like the Daniel Rodriguez, like Neil Magny. He didn't finish in the Neil Magny fight, but he was just chewing up those legs. I think when you corral Ian Gary, those weapons slowly dissipate, and he'll start to try and reside or rely on his pretty underrated clinch game, in my opinion. Ian Gary loves the clinch. He loves to wear down on people using that long frame of his. He kind of drapes over people like a blanket to try and slow them down, make them carry his weight. The issue is that he usually has to be stronger than the person. We saw this in the Jeff Neal fight where he tried to do that to Jeff Neal, but he wasn't stronger than Jeff Neal, so Jeff Neal kept reversing those positions, landing knees to the body, and then Ian Gary would be like, this isn't working, let me exit this. Then he would try again. When Jeff Neal would slowly start to walk him down, he would try and clinch, and then he'd get reversed again. So Shavkat was stronger than Jeff Neal when they fought. Jeff Neal was stronger than Ian Gary when they fought. I can only imagine Shavkat's going to be way stronger than Ian Gary. So the clinch game, immediately, that's not really going to be able to work in this fight, which is one of Ian Gary's key paths to victory, is being able to use that long frame and wear people down in those clinch scenarios, making them carry your weight because you're so long. It's like carrying a ladder almost for those shorter guys. He doesn't have the reach advantage over Shavkat. That's another thing. Ian Gary, usually, he has that in these fights. He didn't have it against Michael Venom Page. I don't use the Michael Venom Page against Ian Gary at all because I think everybody would equally struggle with Michael Venom Page unless you're Douglas Lima, because he got lucky, kind of, or Mike Perry, but that was boxing. That doesn't really count. Ian Gary can win. He can, but I think that some of Shavkat's weapons, like the body shot selection that he has one of the nastiest body shot selections at welterweight. He just does. He lands great knees to the body. The way he implements his wrestling in these catch wrestling scenarios where he catches the kick, or he just in the pocket where he just goes for the leg and then he drops you, and then when you're getting up, he just knees you to the body really fucking hard. He does that very well. He has great straight punch selections. The only thing that really worries me in this fight for a guy like Shavkat against a guy like Ian Gary is the head movement issue that everyone has always talked about with Shavkat Rakhmonov. He doesn't have that bad of head movement, if I'm being honest. The way people talk about it, it's like he doesn't move his head. He does move his head, it's just he doesn't move it off the center line all that much. He moves it like a couple inches back, a couple inches to the left, a couple inches to the right. It's almost like he has like Bas Rutten neck, and he can't move his neck on its own. He has to move his whole body with it. You know what I mean? So that can be a very big issue, especially when you have Ian Gary who's throwing those straight punches, throwing those leg kicks, and then leads them into head kicks. I truly believe that the short notice effect in 5 rounds is going to play a huge factor in this fight, because while there are unknowns about Shavkat and Ian Gary's 5-round cardio, I think that I can only imagine that Shavkat, his style of fight against a guy like Ian Gary who has to be at range, he can't have these high output masterclass performances where he has to manage his output in 3-rounders. I imagine that his 5-round prowess is not going to be all that great, especially when grappling is mixed in, like the Michael Venom Page fight. His cardio didn't look crazy good in that 3rd round. He kind of got lucky that Michael Venom Page's grappling IQ was that bad to get that win, if I'm being honest. So I think Shavkat's going to be able to pressure him. I think in the pocket, where a lot of people think on the feet Ian Gary's always going to have the advantage. I think in the pocket exchanges is where Shavkat's going to really have an advantage. Even though he has those longer arms, his hooks are just better than Ian Gary's. Ian Gary's straight weapons are going to be a lot better than Shavkat's, but even Shavkat has a solid jab, if I'm being honest. I think that Shavkat Rakhmonov is going to finish Ian Gary in the 3rd or 4th round. I think Ian Gary will make the early rounds somewhat competitive, especially in the striking department, because I think he will try and use his range very well for as long as it lasts. But Shavkat pressures very well. I think the first two rounds will look a lot like the first round with Shavkat and Wonderboy, just a little bit more competitive because Wonderboy doesn't have great grappling offense. If I'm being honest, I think Ian Gary has better grappling offense than Wonderboy. I think he'll be able to shed some of the takedowns a little better, but I think as the fight goes on, the strength issue is going to be very apparent in that 3rd and 4th round, and I think Shavkat's going to sub him come round 3 or 4, probably with a rear naked choke, if I'm being honest. I think Ian Gary can win. He has to knock him out early, but I think that Shavkat Rakhmonov drags him into deep waters. He's tired himself, but he's landed so many body shots that Ian Gary somewhat just can't take it anymore. He keels over, and Shavkat subs him in the 4th round. That's my prediction. I think Shavkat finishes him in the 4th round. Ian Gary can win, like I said. I would like to see, it would be chaos if Ian Gary somehow was the guy to end up beating Shavkat, but I think Shavkat gets it done. So we'll see what happens. We move to the main event. Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura in his debut fighting for a title. I'm going to go with Alexandre Pantoja by 2nd round or 1st round submission. Probably 2nd or 3rd, actually. Forget I said 1st, I meant 3rd. Kai Asakura, listen, 21-4. He's younger than Alexandre. He's going to be a bit bigger than him, have a bit more reach. My big issue is that Kai Asakura really swings. He really swings fucking hard, man. And honestly, I have been contemplating picking him this fight week, but I'm going to go with the safer pick in Alexandre Pantoja. Kai can knock out Alexandre Pantoja, if I'm being honest. He hits that hard. He does hit very hard. But, like I said, Kai Asakura swings very heavy. His hooks, he swings, he almost knocks himself over sometimes. He looks for the straight right. He's on the back foot quite a bit. It's going to be in an octagon, not a ring. It's going to be a different environment for him. I wonder what his grappling game against a cage is going to look like. You know what I mean? What's his takedown defense against a cage going to look like against a Pantoja? One of my big fears also is that Kai Asakura hasn't fought at flyweight since 2017. He has not fought down that weight class in 7 years. He's been at bantamweight for 7 years, weighing in at 134.5 for 7 years in a row. Kai Asakura, he's big for flyweight. If he does make weight, he's going to have the striking advantage. Pantoja can crack, but I've seen him get hit before. The amount of wars that Pantoja has been in his career is definitely worrying, if we're being honest, going into a fight with a heavy power puncher like Kai Asakura. I truly believe that the grappling is going to be the X factor in this fight. Whether Pantoja can get it going or not is going to determine this fight. And I'm going to believe in Pantoja's grappling because I've seen him do it against Royval and Moreno. And also, did Pantoja fought Askarov, right? Was that the draw? Or was that Askarov beat him? I forgot about that. But I've just seen Pantoja do wrestling, complete his wrestling transitions against better grapplers than Kai Asakura. He's a bigger guy, but I don't think that his takedown defense is going to be that great. On the feet, I'm going to be very nervous on this fight. I'm going to be very anxious because Kai Asakura, he doesn't run at people, but when he hurts you bad. But he can also get hurt himself. He's been knocked out 3 times in his career. Pantoja hits pretty hard. But I'm going to favor the grappling of Pantoja over the striking of Asakura in this case, because I've just seen it against better people. You know what I mean? So I think Alexandre Pantoja, I think he's going to weather the early storm. Maybe Asakura rocks him in the first round. I think Pantoja is going to be able to complete his transitions in grappling, and he's going to be able to take down Kai Asakura. I wonder what Kai Asakura's cardio is going to look like. He's only been to decision 6 times. I wonder what it's going to look like across 5 rounds. You know what I mean? Has he ever been 5 rounds before? 3. I mean, even the title fights in Ryzen aren't even 5 rounds. They're 3 rounds. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's hard to pick Asakura, especially against a, well-known guy like Pantoja, who I've seen compete at the highest level for many years now. I've seen him run through guys like Perez and just dominate dudes like Royval and have these wars with Brandon Moreno. Asakura is going to be a great addition to the UFC flyweight division. Does he win the title in his debut? Does he win the title in a main card slot? A main event slot, rather, in his debut? I do not believe so. If he does, Asakura is going to be a star in the making, but I believe Pantoja is going to put out that fire early for the time being, and Asakura is going to get subbed in the 3rd round. UFC Thoughts. These have been my picks and breakdown for every fight on UFC 310, Pantoja vs. Asakura on December 7th, 2024. My confident picks reside with Kennedy and Nzechukwu, Vicente Luque, and in the co-main event, Shavkat Rakhmonov. My pre-card rating is an 8 out of 10. This card's pretty sick, man. The main card, even though there are some fights on the main card that shouldn't be on there, Bryce Mitchell, Kron, Gracie, the prelims are pretty stacked. There's a lot of leeway for very entertaining fights throughout this entire card, from the prelims to the main event. You have Asakura coming in his debut. Can he win the title in his debut? Let's fucking find out, dude. Shavkat Ian Gary is going to be a crazy fight. Gane versus Volkov can definitely be very entertaining. Just depends on how willing they are to trade with each other. I mean, we saw they were willing to trade in their first fight. Nate Landwehr, DooHo, Choi is going to be crazy. Can the Dominick Reyes title run continue? You know, Vicente Luque, can he stun the growth of Themba Gorimbo? There's a lot of guys on this card that can. I mean, Bryan battle Randy Brown. Holy shit, man, this card's sick. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. This card, last pay-per-view of the year. Let's see what fucking happens, guys. Only 2 more cards on the year. I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.